The one in, one out rule is a method of decluttering that minimalists swear by. Some of the biggest names in minimalism, like the minimalist, tout this rule. Marissa, a popular YouTuber from HSN Life, calls it the secret for a clutter-free life or clutter-free home. If you were to Google this, you'll find so many blogs and videos touting the benefits of this rule. I'm, however, not a fan. I mean, surprise, surprise. Shauna is not a fan of something minimalist. How shocking. Today, we're going to talk a bit about what this rule is and then ultimately why I'm not a fan. Let's get into it. So what is the one in, one out rule? It's very simple. For every item that you bring into your home, you declutter a similar item. Now, it's supposed to be, something within the same category. You bring in a piece of clothing, you declutter a piece of clothing, but I feel like the minimalist would want you to be more specific. Like you bring in a new t-shirt, so you declutter a t-shirt. But I feel like if you're in the ballpark, it would probably apply. Now, I am a fan of the intention behind this rule. It's really, first and foremost, it's kind of like a maintenance technique. It's not the thing that you go to when you're at the start of your decluttering journey, but once you've kind of decluttered a bit and you have, you've kind of found your sweet spot, I think that would be the time that you would implement this rule to keep that equilibrium so you don't start accumulating too much stuff in one or many categories. It's supposed to promote balance and equilibrium as well as organization, because it's really difficult to be organized when you own a lot of stuff. So by virtue of owning fewer things, I don't know if you could hear my stomach grumbling. I'm going to say that again just in case. By virtue of owning fewer things, they're just easier to organize, easier to track, and to keep an eye on things. I'm fine with that conceptually. Also, it's intended to promote mindful spending or mindful consumption, because every time you buy something, you now have to weigh your options. Is this new thing worth the space of something else? Because if you have to declutter something every time you bring something in, you're now kind of like weighing your options, and you might think more about, like, we'll just take t-shirts as an example, so I talked about earlier. I see this new t-shirt, let's say it's a new graphic tee. I'm like, ooh, this is a nice graphic tee. I'm now having to weigh it against other t-shirts. Okay, well, what would I want to declutter? What could I declutter? And then, okay, is there anything that's like old, anything that's ratty, anything that's like maybe stained, and you might start digging into deeper criteria depending on the category that you're talking about. It's supposed to make you think twice before you even bring something in. And then it's also supposed to discourage impulse spending, because you have to think about it. And then I'm assuming if you follow this rule, what you'll realize is that there's a lot of stuff that you want to buy. And once you start thinking about this, you'll realize, oh, this new stuff isn't actually stuff that's meaningful or important to me. I just wanted it for some kind of superficial reason. It's nice, it's cute, it's popular. I saw it and I just wanted it, whatever. All of this stuff sounds nice. And if this method works for you, I'm not telling you that you have to live your life according to me. I'm sharing an alternative perspective, and I will also share with you alternatives if you want to kind of get into this mindset. So why am I not a fan? There's lots of reasons. One of my main gripes with minimalism is that it's a stuff-centered philosophy / lifestyle. I talked about this in a video 2-ish weeks back, and I kind of explored more of this concept, so you can go back to that video if you want to hear more about it. But it's a stuff-centered way of thinking and a way of living. And in that video, I talked about if you become a more minimal person, you're going to own fewer things. And then everything that you purchase becomes more important. And you might kind of agonize over, or your purchasing or your thoughts before you purchase something can turn into this kind of obsessive thinking and even agonizing over something. Now we've just added another layer of something that you have to think about before making a purchase. It's a rule that brings like quantity and just stuff to the center of our minds. And this rule is ultimately more than anything about quantity. That's all that is really happening here, is just this focus on quantity. And for me, quantity is not the most important metric of stuff ownership. I mean, like, it plays a role, sure, because as I talked about in that past video, there's owning too little and there's owning too much, and there's a lot of that middle ground where most people will probably find some happiness. And unless you're in this category of truly too much, overwhelm, anxiety, all of that, unless you're in that space, how much you own, whether you have 600 things versus 677 things, that's probably like not gonna make or break your life and your happiness and your contentment, and your functionality. There are so many things that matter to me more than quantity. And if I want to be intentional about how I shop, which is one of the things I like about this, there are ways that are better. Like, there are other questions you can ask yourself if you want to be intentional, instead of what do I have to get rid of in order to bring this thing in. And when you think about, owning 600 things versus 677 things, will those extra 77 items will owning 77 items less make you happier? Will it make your life more functional? Will owning more stuff impede your ability to live your life? Will owning fewer things make you happier and more content? The difference between 600 and 677. Will it? For me, I don't think so. This method also seems kind of disingenuous to me. It seems the only word that I can really think about is kind of artificial. Like, you are forcing your own hand to declutter something. Because why? Because like what a rule told you to, minimalism told you to. This to me is the equivalent of minimalism told me so. I know that's not like really it. And I feel like there's somebody who's me up in the comments being like, you're missing the point. No, I'm not missing the point. I get it's supposed to help you. I get that it's supposed to help you shop intentionally, but if you actually follow through with the rule and you get rid of something, you're forcing yourself to get rid of something simply because you brought something in, not because it makes the most sense, not because it is like a good choice, simply because you brought something in. Perhaps the most frustrating aspect of this rule to me is its promise of helping you shop more intentionally. Now, if I could call anything bread and butter of this channel, it would be talking about shopping. I feel like you could say that minimalism isn't the bread and butter of this channel, and you would be right and be like, yeah, this is not the go-to place for minimalist takes or even anti-minimalist takes. But this is the place where you go to when you want to think more critically about shopping. So I have some thoughts here. Sassy Shauna is out. This rule is not meant for people who currently struggle with shopping. This rule is meant for people who already have good shopping habits in place. So if you're somebody who's struggling with your shopping habits, I just don't recommend this rule as the thing to go to become more successful with your shopping habits. One thing I read time and time again was that it will help you stop impulse buying. It will help you stop impulse buying if you are aware of your triggers and your cues, and having any kind of structure to your shopping or any kind of rules. If having any will stop you from shopping, then this could. Now, me at the early part of my no-buy / before my no-buy, the reason why I wasn't successful with things like budgets is because having rules didn't stop me from shopping, because rules don't address triggers. If you want to change your shopping habits, you need to address your triggers / your cues. In the habit loop is a cycle. Cue, craving, response, reward. You shop because of a cue. What kicks the whole thing off is the cue. You're not just going to magically overnight, because you want to stop impulse buying. You need to address the cues. This rule doesn't address the cues. So as an example, if our emotions are really predominant cue for us, if we have a bad day at the office, that we have a negative emotion, that triggers the whole habit loop. I mean, I'm not saying in general for everybody. I mean, if it is actually a trigger or a cue for you, the 1 in, 1 out rule will not stop you from going to the mall or the shops on your way home, or scrolling on your way home. Or one of my personal favorites was stopping by at Union Station when I was taking the train home. I made so many regret purchases there, because I had to go to Union. I was waiting for the train. I bought $110 worth of RMS eyeshadows on a freaking whim on my way home from school. Did I use them? No. I ended up giving them to my mom. I don't know if she actually used them, but you get the point. If you want to shop, if you want to change the way you shop and be a more mindful consumer, even if you have good shopping habits, there are just better ways. There are better ways where you're not thinking about how much stuff you have all of the time. I also think there's potential for this rule to kind of create or start, manufacturing some guilt associated with shopping stuff, because what if you don't get rid of something? And then you can just kind of maybe feel this anxiety about having to get rid of something every time that you buy something. And it can cause obsessive behavior. I know for me, one of the main reasons why I don't touch this rule, I mean, there's two, there are better ways, but also I had experienced this stuff anxiety because I was so focused on stuff. I was tracking how much I was bringing in last year. I had such anxiety about how much I was bringing in, it became obsessive. There is absolutely potential for this rule to become obsessive. The strict application of this rule as well, I think, overlooks situations where it is necessary and or favorable or enjoyable to bring in more than one thing. Let me just give you 2 examples that came up this year. Your girl in February took a little trip to Niagara Falls, crossed the border on a little impromptu trip to go get some Dunkin'. That was great. And there was a Target right beside the Dunkin'. The last opportunity I had to even entertain going to Target was July 2019. Did I buy more than one thing? Yeah, I did. Do I regret it? No, I don't regret it. So, I'm not going to declutter stuff because minimalism told me to. And you might say oh, that's an exception, but I feel like there are lots of times in a given year where there are exceptions, where maybe it's our birthday, maybe it's the holiday time, maybe you take a little trip to Target, maybe you take a trip, period. There are many times in a year where there can be exceptions. Another one, as an example, my partner and I moved in together a couple of months ago. And we needed some things in order to live together and make it work. Example, we didn't have enough shoe storage. That white thing you see behind me is a shoe storage cabinet. If we didn't get that, we would literally be having our shoes in piles on the floor. There was no other space. Things that maybe aren't a necessity but make life comfortable are this couch that you see behind me. Also have a TV. Was the TV necessary? No, but we couldn't watch anything together. All I had was a computer, like a laptop. I mean, yeah, I have a monitor, but it's a small monitor. It's not like you don't sit on your couch and like watch a movie on your laptop. Like, I mean, you could, but this just makes life comfortable. We also got extra towels. So both of us could bathe properly, you know? We did get extras. We got a rainfall shower head, I'm not gonna lie. That thing is amazing. And we got a mat for washing dishes by our sink. And some of the stuff was necessary, some of it wasn't. And ultimately, some of the most like memorable moments my partner and I have had over the last handful of months was sitting here watching the Chris Nolan Batman movie, which are awesome, by the way, on this couch and like eating ice cream. Not only did the 1 in, 1 out rule not apply because I didn't have anything to declutter in lieu of the couch or the TV, unless I wanted to declutter my laptop, but like that doesn't make sense either. I really wasn't concerned about the number of things I own. Quantity wasn't important. What was important was functionality. What are things that are going to help us function here? What are things that are going to bring ease and comfortability to our lives? There is truly no point in turning every purchase, if not most purchases, into this agonizing, navel-gazing situation where we have to consider things for hours. Bigger purchases, sure. We spent a whole heck of a lot of time picking out couches. But everything else aside, it doesn't have to be that. And I have some alternatives for you to consider instead. I have 6-ish questions that you can put in place of this 1 in, 1 out rule. Now I'm giving you a handful, not so that you can use all 6 or 7, but hopefully 1 will resonate with you, maybe 2, and you can go, yes, that's my question. Number 1, would I rather have the thing or would I rather have the money? Super simple and will apply to any category. I feel like this question is maybe the best for helping you suss out impulse purchases and or helping you to prioritize. Number 2, how many hours did I have to work in order to afford this? I feel like this is best for impulse buys, maybe like trips to the mall, kind of like just like true consumer goods. I think this maybe like applies less to like really big ticket items you could. I mean, I feel like it would stress me out to think how many hours I had to work for that couch. Like I knew I had to buy a couch. I don't necessarily like want to go there, but for everyday stuff like this shirt, the mug that I was drinking out of, you know, impulse purchases too, do it. Ask yourself that question, especially if you're making like a big impulse purchase, like you go on a website and you just want to buy a t-shirt and all of a sudden your cart's like $300-400. Then you could be like, oh yeah, how many hours did I have to work to get all this stuff? Then you're like, oh shit, do I really want to be spending, I don't know, however big your cart is, 6 hours, 12 hours, 2 weeks, I don't know, depending on your cart. Do I really want to work 8 days? 8 freaking business days for this thing? Nah, buddy. No. Okay, number 3 is kind of like a take on cost per wear. So for me, something is a good purchase if I can wear it 100 times. All the fashion girlies say 30 times. 30 times is nothing. 30 times is not getting your money's worth, in my opinion. And not just your money's worth, but like, I don't want to go on a tangent on this. 100 wears is where it's at for me. So if I want to get to 100 wears, I think about it like this. How many times a month do I think I could wear this item? And then how many months would it take me to get to 100 wears? So if I wear this item 3 times a month, it would take me about 34 months to wear this item, which is almost 3 years. So 34 months, like most things that I wear, can't actually be worn 12 months out of the year. because I'm in a 4-season temperature or 4-season climate. So it's probably more like 4 to 6 years to get to 100 wears for something that I can wear 3 times a month. Am I really willing to put 4 to 6 years worth of effort into wearing this shirt? I say 4 years, yes. I've owned this for about a year. I bought this in 2022. I don't remember when. So close to a year. I've probably worn this 15 times ish. 15 is probably a good estimate. 15 times in a year. At that rate, probably another 3 years. More than that. This one just really helps to do a double take. Again, best with clothing. Number 4, will this item be useful to me in a year? Will I want this thing in a year? Number 5 is, do I see myself using this item to completion? And am I willing to put in the time and effort to do that? That's not applicable for everything. You can't use a shirt up to completion, but consumables like makeup, hair care products, skincare products, things like that, you can. That one really helped me curb my makeup consumption in the past couple of years. Because I previously never bought makeup to use it up. I just bought stuff because I liked it. I want to buy things that I will use. I don't want to be a storage facility. So that one was a mind shift for me. Number 6, where will this item live and do I have room for it? My bathroom is maxed out on space. Before my partner moved in, I had a lot of space. I do not have space now because otherwise it would impede on his space. And he deserves his own space just as much as I deserve my space. And honestly, he's given me more than half. So, I gotta be respectful here. If I want to bring in anything else, kind of beauty, kind of skincare, hair care related, there's no space for it. There's just no space. So I truly cannot bring in any extra fancy soaps or extra new experimental skincare products. There's nowhere for me to put them. They're just not. I can't even put them in my bedroom because there's no space there either. We out of room here. That is a very practical thing that helps me, that could help you, depending on the item and if that question is relevant. And then lastly, on a basic level, do I have something I can use already? Can I borrow this item or can I go without? I have personally borrowed a wild amount of stuff, a weird amount of stuff. Maybe not just borrowed, but people have given me stuff. As an example, I don't eat eggs. I don't like eggs, and I also don't typically eat dairy. The exception being ice cream. Everything else, my coffee creamer and my milk, it's all, even when I go out, it's all almond milk, that kind of thing. So when I was baking and I needed a 2 teaspoons or 2 tablespoons of heavy cream or something, and I also different time needed literally 2 eggs, why am I gonna go buy a carton of eggs for 2 for literally 1 time? So somebody gave them to me. Now that's a weird niche baking thing, but there's a lot of things that I have borrowed, a level, a screwdriver, a wrench, a vacuum cleaner. A lot of people in our lives are really nice and will allow us to borrow stuff if we ask them, and we don't necessarily need to buy new stuff every time kind of a new project comes along. Sometimes people will have stuff, and also depending on the thing, sometimes people are take it. Take my cookbooks. Take them. People can be relieved with that. But even just getting in the practice of thinking about this, do I have something I can use already? Can I go without or can I borrow? Is kind of helping you or can help you expand on how you think about your stuff. There are some things that I think people think that they need to own, like a blender. And before I got one, I was why? I don't use blenders. So you don't need one. I mean, I didn't own a TV for 2 years. Like, you don't need to own stuff just because other people own stuff. So borrow first, and then eventually, you could be like, all right, if I use this thing more than X times a year, then it's worth me buying. That can even be a question too, depending on the item. To conclude, the one in, one out rule has a time and a place and is probably applicable to some people. There is some goodness in the rules, and I think the intentions behind it are good as well. But I just think that there are better ways to get to what the rule is trying to achieve, to become a more thoughtful consumer, a more intentional consumer. And also, I just think that there are more important things than quantity and how much stuff you own. That's not the most important question. And when I see tips like this, when I see the one in, one out rule kind of being this like hallmark rule of minimalism, when I see that, and then I also hear minimalists being like, it's not about how much you own, I can see why some people get confused. If it's not really about how much you own, why do we have rules like this? Or why are there rules like this in minimalism, or suggestions of like, this is the best practice? Ultimately, despite what I think, do what works best for you and whatever rule you find successful. If you are a fan of the one in, one out rule, I absolutely want to hear from you. How has that gone for you? Even if you just tested it, how has that gone for you? What do you like about it? What kind of success have you had with it? Leave it in the comments below, because there probably are people out there where, it would work for them. Let our girl know in the comments. Thank you for watching and hanging out with me today. I loved having you here, and I hope you'll subscribe to catch more content like this. Thank you for watching. Bye.